Eddie Canistracci here, and I'm back with the third and final video in my Overkill Every Goddamn Album Review series. It's a trilogy, it's a goddamn trilogy, and this is part 3, and now we're going to be hitting the comeback years. Obviously, if you didn't watch part 1 or part 2, I'm leaving links down below. Watch part 1 and part 2, because I don't want to have to talk about all that stuff again. Overkill have a lot of goddamn albums. I love them. I love most of them. And watch those goddamn videos if you haven't. But I think most of you watching this probably have, so we can just jump right into this. And we're going to do that right now. Here we go. But we left off with Immortalis, 2007's Immortalis, and I thought it was a step in the right direction and an improvement upon the last couple albums. And it was the first time we had Ron Lipnicki playing drums, who is my second favorite Overkill drummer, and he's an amazing drummer, and I think he helped inject some energy into the band because they started to get better once he joined. Immortalis wasn't a great album, it was simply a good album. But in 2010, they did release a great album, the mighty Ironbound. Ironbound. Awesome album cover and title, and an awesome album. And this marks the beginning of their comeback. Yes, a lot of people refer to this as a comeback album. Both creatively and commercially, it was a comeback, especially creatively. And it was the first time in a while where you had a consistent lineup. As always, you have Bobby Blitz and Dee Dee Verney, who are the core members of Overkill. After going through 2 different guitar teams in the 90s, they finally got Dave Linsk and Derek Taylor as lead and rhythm guitarist, and Ron Lipnicki was like the final piece of this puzzle. They got a lineup, and these guys are the band, with only the exception of one member changing in recent years, but they pretty much, this is the band, this is modern Overkill, and modern Overkill kicks ass, and this leads into my favorite period for Overkill after the 80s. Even though there are a couple albums in the 90s I would put above all these albums, but in terms of consistency, in terms of a consistent period, this is my second favorite period for Overkill after the 80s. And it's the period that I got into with Overkill. So I'm someone that got into Overkill with the new stuff, with this period. And then I went back and got into all the great older stuff. So the first time I heard this album, I heard it after already hearing White Devil Armory. But as soon as I got that album, I went back and I got the Electric Age and this album, and I loved them both. And this album is great. Instantly, you can hear a big difference between this and Immortalis. The production is so much better. That's another thing about this later Overkill period, is the productions are great. They're punchy, they're strong. The songwriting is better. It's more consistent, stronger hooks and melodies throughout. The musicianship's great. You can tell the band just sound hungry again. They haven't sounded this hungry, I think, since maybe like WFO in the mid-90s. Like, this band sounds hungry and excited again. And the thing that really distinguishes the comeback period is Bobby Blitz's vocals. Oh my God, this is his best singing, I think, in his entire career. And I love his vocals, especially in the early and mid-90s. I think he did a lot of amazing singing. But this period on, and I don't think this album is even the peak of his vocals, but this is the first album that kind of introduces the modern day Bobby Blitz vocals. And he's a fucking powerhouse. Man, like a fine wine. He's just gotten better with age. Like, he's really literally better now than he was 20 or 30 years ago. His vocals are just so filled with power and also character and personality. He does all this different stuff, and he could just turn any little turn of phrase into a hook. He's also a great lyricist. Love the lyrics, love the hooks, awesome stuff. This album opens up with an epic track, the green and black. The official Overkill color to me is green, and obviously you're going to offset that with a little black. So green and black. It begins with a great Dee Dee Verney bass line at the beginning. He's the musical leader of the band, kind of setting it off, and then it goes into this epic, anthemic thrash song. I love it. A lot of changes, and you could instantly hear. I can imagine. I feel bad that I wasn't listening to Overkill when this album first dropped, but I can imagine everyone hearing this was like, yeah, fuck yeah, Overkill's back. And then the second track, the title track, Ironbound, an amazing track, one of the strongest tracks on the album. There's another great thrash song. One thing I said about Overkill in the other 2 videos is that they managed to be very heavy, but catchy and melodic at the same time. And that's That's a difficult feat, and they managed to do it here. I think they were losing that a little bit in the early to mid 2000s. It's like suddenly Bobby and Dee Dee just suddenly got it. Like they just became crackerjack songwriters again. And it's very similar to how Lemmy writes songs in Motorhead, where he's very skilled at doing subtle variations of the same kind of song again and again, but somehow he always makes it very catchy and enjoyable. And Overkill likewise do the same thing. They're very similar to Motorhead with their consistency and their ability to keep doing subtle variations on the same Overkill song again and again. And somehow it always feels like that's the song you need to be listening to right then and there. And Ironbound is such a song. I love it. Bring Me the Night. Woo! I believe that was the lead-off single for this album. And man, I can understand why. My favorite song on the album. Really catchy, really fun. Sounds a lot like Diamond Head's Helpless, or Metallica's cover of Diamond Head's Helpless, which is one of my favorite songs of all time. So hey, I don't mind. Good artists borrow, great artists steal. So that's right. So steal that fucking Diamond Head song and make it into another awesome song, which is what they did. I love Bring Me the Night. Total new wave of British heavy metal worship. It's that line between thrash and traditional metal, which I love. I'm all about that line. And it's a great song, really catchy and fun. The Goal Is Your Soul. Probably my second favorite song on this album. So right here, this section of the album is my favorite part. Goal Is Your Soul is a deep, dark, restless song. Great vocal hooks, great shades, a little darker and not quite as fast as the other songs, but in a way a little heavier because of the darkness. And I love that phrase, the goal is your soul. Bobby can just really turn the phrase. I love it. Give a Little's all right. It's a little, I don't know, it sounds a little like Meathead Anthrax to me, but I'll let it slide. I still like it, but it's probably my least favorite song on the album. Endless War, great song. The Head and Heart, ooh, that's a heavy song, really dark and heavy. Sounds like something that could have been on Horoscope. Kind of has a horror movie vibe to it. And Bobby, I think it's Bobby, maybe it's Dee Dee. It's Dee Dee or Bobby does this low, guttural, Cookie Monster death metal voice, and it's really cool. I like it. Sounds like a monster movie. In Vain's a great song. Killing for a Living, it's a great song. They rip off Damage Inc. But again, hey, nothing wrong there if you do a good job of it. And I think this song and this whole album is better than anything Metallica's done post Injustice for All. In fact, I think everything Overkill has done from this point, from Ironbound on to the most recent album, is better than everything that Metallica's done post Injustice for All. That's just my opinion. And that's why Overkill is my favorite thrash band of all time. Yes, there's a reason for it. Science. They're the best. Yeah, if you were going to the 80s, they had a lot of competition. These days, no competition. They're easily the best. And I've loved a lot of the recent Megadeth albums, but Dave Mustaine is not nearly as consistent as fucking Bobby and Dee Dee. These albums are awesome. The last track, SRC, one of the best songs on the album. Just a great thrashy Rank-A-Rama. Love it. I know a lot of people think this is the best album from their comeback period. I think some of that is because it was the first one, so I get it. If you were a long-term fan and this album drops, I'm sure it made a very big impact on you. And it is great. And it does break my top 10. But I actually like 3 other albums that they did afterwards a little bit better, including this one, The Electric Age from 2012. Still keeping it the same lineup. You could tell that they knew they had something here. Bobby and Dee Dee know they have something here with these guys. They're obviously all getting along. And I think this album is even better than the last one. You can tell it's like a victory lap. They're charged. They know it's working. They know that Ironbound kicked ass, and they're like, yeah, let's do another one that kicks ass. What I think gives this one a slight edge on Ironbound, overall the songs are just a little bit catchier, and it's a little rawer. It brings back a little of that punk and hardcore vibe, and to me, it feels a little more distinctly Overkill than the last album. It was like the last album was Overkill doing an awesome thrash album, and this is like Overkill doing an awesome Overkill album, if you kind of get what I'm saying. I think Overkill fans will understand what I'm saying. But it just brings in a little more of that scrappy Jersey vibe overall, and I think Bobby's vocals are even hitting another level, and he still hasn't peaked yet. but he's hitting another level. You could tell he's trying to do different stuff, and man, it's amazing. And I just love the vibe. In a lot of ways, this sounds like an album that could have been released right after WFO. It has a little bit of that vibe, even though the bass isn't quite as loud. No album has bass as loud as WFO. It would be impossible. It would break your fucking speakers. But I already talked about WFO. I'm talking about The Electric Age. Badass. Probably my favorite album cover from this period. Like it. Always like when they lean into the green. Awesome opening track, Come and Get It. Love the fucking drums. Overkill, who has produced all these later period albums, they really got it. They got their production down. One criticism I said about the recent Accept albums, even though I really like them, they have a sameness to them in terms of how they sound. Whereas Overkill, even though they're producing these albums themselves, they managed to give these albums all a little bit of a different shade. The Electric Age has a different shade than Ironbound. Like I said, it has a little more of a scrappy punk thing going on, a little touch of hardcore. I love Come and Get It, the tribal drums in the beginning, and then they get into it, and it's just a great opening, a great thrash song. Electric Rattlesnake, my second favorite song on the album. I believe it was the lead-off single. It's just a great thrashy, kind of rides that line between traditional metal and thrash again song. Really catchy and fun. Sounds a little like, I don't know, something that Judas Priest or Motorhead might have done. I just love Bobby's vocals. They're amazing on it. Everything he sings just sounds so badass and cool. And even the phrase, electric rattlesnake, that sounds very Lemmy-esque in my opinion. And I love Motorhead. I love Lemmy. So of course I love this kind of shit. I love this song. Wish You Were Dead. That's a cool song. I love that. Good thrash tune. Black Days, a little darker, a little heavier. You know, there's always this little undercurrent of doom that kind of get into these songs, even when it's not a full-fledged doom song, but you could always hear the Sabbath influence. Save Yourself, another great song. Drop the Hammer Down. Maybe the heaviest song on the album. There's a real fucking brutal thrash song. But unlike some of the stuff on Bloodletting, I don't feel they sacrifice their catchiness. Even when they get this heavy, there's still hooks and melodies, and that's something that's very consistent on all these later period albums. And my favorite song on the album is Old Wounds, New Scars. Easily my favorite song on this album. One of my favorite Overkill songs ever. Would actually make my top 10 favorite Overkill songs. I love it. To me, this is total 100% Overkill. Great hooks, melodies. I love that chorus when Bobby sings, got a lot of mouth for a Jersey white boy. Really badass. Love those lyrics. Totally Jersey. It's awesome. All over, but the shouting's great. Good Night. Normally I don't like songs called Good Night, but this one kicks ass. It rocks. It sends this album home. You know, I love that. It's just 10 songs. 10 tight songs. By this point, Overkill knows that we're past the dreaded CD age, and now we're getting into the rocking records that are 10 tracks again age, and I love it. This is one of my favorite Overkill albums. It's up there. It's like my 9th favorite. There you go. Breaks the top 10. And then in 2014, this is the album that got me into Overkill. Yeah, I only became an Overkill fan in 2014. I've not lived with the band for a long time, but man, this album had such an impact on me that I had to get all their albums. And now I own all their albums, and it's because of this album. This was my gateway Overkill album. I had heard the rumors. I heard that they had this great comeback, and people had loved all their stuff from Ironbound on. And this happened to be the album that was new at the time. And I think I saw a video for Armorous, and I was like, yeah, this kicks ass. So I got it, and before you know it, they became my favorite thrash band. And this is still one of my favorite Overkill albums, and this is my favorite album from this later day period, the comeback era. Maybe it is because this was the first one I heard, but I don't know. I mean, I listened to this again and again. I was just listening to it again today, and I think this is objectively and subjectively the strongest album from this period. It's definitely my favorite Overkill album after Necroshine. After Necroshine, this is my favorite. So this would be my 7th favorite Overkill album. It's awesome. The production is amazing. This is their best production from this period. And I think this is Bobby Blitz's vocal peak. Yeah, right here on this album. I think this album features his greatest vocal performance that he's ever recorded on an album. It is so strong and powerful. And man, you just listen to this guy. He's like a fucking army or a gang manifested as a single human voice, if you could understand that. You know, you just listen to this guy, he's like leading a fucking army of fucking Jersey bros. down the street with fucking baseball bats and pipes in their hands, and they're gonna bust down your door and then punch you in the face and say, Jersey. That's why. I love it. It begins with XD. I don't know how you describe this. M cubed or something. I don't know. I don't know what that is. All I know is it sounds like a synth blast from a wrestling match in hell. That's what it sounds like. It's like we're in hell. There's a wrestling match between Charlie and another demon, and we know Charlie is going to kick his ass. And then suddenly, boom, it launches into Armorist, which is kind of the title track, but not the title track. And I love that. I love when a title track is not the title track, but kind of a title track. I don't know why. I just think it's cool. Anyway, this song's awesome. One of the greatest Overkill openings of all time. It fucking launches in. And like I said before, this song is a prime example of how brutal and heavy they can be, but without losing their grasp of melodies and hooks. And that, I love the armory, Dee Dee's little chant. I always love the chants and how they work with Bobby Blitz's vocals. Not unlike Joey Belladonna with Scott Ian and Anthrax, which I liked back in the day when they used to do the chants with him singing on top. It's an awesome song, really charges you up. And then it gets to an even better song, Down to the Bone, one of my favorite songs on this album. Fucking top shelf thrash. This is great. The production's a little more modern, but to me, musically, this could have been on Taking Over. It's this great, top-notch Overkill thrash, really hooky. Pig, really heavy, intense song. I fucking love it. Sounds like the kind of music that's playing in Leatherface's head when he's chainsawing people up. That's what it sounds like. So if that sounds appealing to you, you'd probably like the song Pig. Bitter Pill. I believe they released a video for this as well. Bitter Pill, great song. I love it. Dark and dirgy, a little doomy, and it's kind of like this perfect bridge between thrash, traditional metal, doom metal. It's like all here, all in the same stew, and fucking Bobby coming up with these great vocal hooks. I love the chorus. I love the lyrics. I love this whole goddamn song. Where There's Smoke, another fun, awesome, ass-kicking thrash song. Freedom Rings is great. Another Day to Die. Love this song. Love that chorus. I love the guitar work. Dave and Derek are doing a great job. I love their dual leads, especially in the next song. Here we go. King of the Rap Bastards. That's the song you heard at the beginning. King of the Rap Bastards is my favorite song on this album. It's essentially the old wounds, new scars of this album. Very similar in a lot of ways, and that's a good thing because that song's awesome. But yeah, and this song might be even more awesome. I really love it. It's one of my favorite Overkill songs. Probably would be in my top 10. I love that chorus. The way Bobby's singing and that melody, and then Dave and Derek's dual lead are doing, it's awesome. It has a little bit of an early Maiden quality with maybe a little touch of Master of Puppets era Metallica. It has that kind of vibe to that melody, and it's just charging along. That's the amazing thing about Overkill. You listen to them, it's like they're not missing a beat. They're just charging along, but yet they fucking throw these melodies and hooks on top of these beats like it's nothing. Like they're just in the zone. Like they just have a skill. You could just tell they really got their chops now. This is a band that's tight. This is a really fucking tight band. Like Tuco, Breaking Bad. Tight, tight, tight. That's Overkill. That's what it sounds like. Tight, tight, tight. Love this song. So Jersey. So Overkill. It's awesome. It's All Yours is great. And the name's great. Kind of a Accept-esque closing anthemic metal song. I love it. Always hear a lot of Accept influence in Overkill. Yeah, this is a great song. It's a perfect album. It's one of their best albums. One of my favorite Overkill albums. Even some recent albums that I really liked from other thrash acts, nothing competes with White Devil Armory, in my opinion. Further proof why Overkill is the number one best thrash band making music today. They're just not resting on their laurels. Look at all these albums they've knocked out in the past 10, 15 years. They're hungry and they're competitive, and it's like they're making music that's viable now. Like, this is thrash, but it's not entirely retro. It has the spirit of the 80s thrash, but it doesn't sound like 80s thrash. It just sounds like the way the thrash would have naturally evolved if bands just kept playing thrash. You know what I mean? This is just what Overkill would have sounded like after Horoscope or WFO. Like, if they just kind of kept on going, and eventually they would make albums that sounded like this. I guess they did anyway, regardless. So I guess it all worked out from an evolutionary standpoint. It sounds current while still being old school at the same time. It's both old school and new school. That's what it's like. And that's why I love these albums. And, you listen to it and you're just like, yeah, thrash is alive and well. Thank you, Overkill. And then we get to their second to last album, The Grinding Wheel. Another album I love. Now, this is my least favorite of the last 5 albums. So this is my least favorite of the comeback era. But I still love it, and I still think it's an awesome album. It just misses my top 10. In a lot of ways, this album is like the Under the Influence for this period. In the same way, Under the Influence was my least favorite album from the 80s, but I still loved it. This is my least favorite from the comeback period, but I still love it. And also, like Under the Influence, it's, by Overkill standards, a little poppier. It's a little more melodic. It's not as thrashy and heavy and ass-kicking. And they put a little more emphasis on melody, hooks, and experimentation, a little bit of experimentation. And I think that's great. And that's the thing. As much as I love a fucking assault to the senses like White Devil Armory, it's great to here and there get an album that's a little different, that shows a little musical diversity. And again, like I was saying before, like it's cool to hear the albums being produced different and have a different vibe. Overkill's really an album-oriented band. And you could tell, like, they don't just think of albums as, let's just knock out this album so we can go and tour, like a lot of older rock bands think, that's the vibe you get. Like, the albums might, even if they're solid enough, they just sound like the band's kind of going through the motions. Where Overkill sounds like they're really actively trying to create new kinds of albums and make the album experience different. And this is a great example of that. And it's a great album, even if it doesn't quite kick ass like the other 4 albums that I'm reviewing here. But I do love it. And the album kicks off with another green anthem, a green Overkill anthem, Mean Green Killing Machine. I think it's a great song. Kind of starts off the tribal thing. They like to do that with the drums. And then it kicks into this fucking epic thrash song. Very long, 7 minutes, 29 seconds, but never gets boring. A lot of cool changes. I love Mean Green Killing Machine. Total Overkill. Second track, love it. One of my favorite songs on the album. Goddamn Trouble. Even that title sounds like Overkill. So tough and Jersey. Goddamn Trouble. It's a little thrashy, but I'd pretty much just call this just straight up traditional metal. This is just like tough street metal. Again, you can hear the new wave of British heavy metal influence, the Judas Priest influence. I love Goddamn Trouble. It's a catchy, fun song. And that's the thing, too, that I really love about Overkill. They've kept the fun aspect to their music. Like, even though they have a lot of really heavy and dark songs, they occasionally can just have a fun kind of party thrash song or party metal song, kind of like Goddamn Trouble. And they have a few other cases like this throughout all these albums. One of the things I don't like about a lot of the modern thrash, even the older thrash bands do, ever since the 90s, they've all gotten very serious. They're just always serious all the time. And I think it's pretty much just Overkill and Megadeth. In terms of the Big 8, really, Megadeth and Overkill are like the only 2 bands that still have a sense of humor. And it's one of the things, that's why they're my 2 favorites. Overkill's my favorite thrash band of the Big 8, and Megadeth's my second favorite. So there you go. I like an element of humor. And also, both those bands, they take risks. They do different kinds of songs. And they don't always have to just be heavy all the time, And that's one of the things that keeps their albums interesting, in my opinion. But when they are thrashy, both bands kick ass, like this band does on Our Finest Hour. Great, very melodic thrash song. Has a great anthemic chorus. Really catchy. That was the lead-off single, I believe. It was the first one leaked on the internet anyway. Shine On. Great song. Long Road. All great. All these songs are really catchy. Come Heavy. Woo! That's probably, that's like, I think, my favorite song on the album. This sounds like it could have been on I Hear Black. It's very Sabbathy. It's a kind of a doom metal song. Sludgy, stoner, kind of stoner metal song. And they do that great. Overkill could have been a great stoner metal or doom metal band if they wanted to be. But instead, they wanted to be a thrash band that sometimes does a stoner or doom metal song. And I think that's great. Anyway, I love it. Regardless, if they were doom metal, thrash, traditional metal, whatever kind of metal Overkill wants to do, they usually do it better than anyone else. And Come Heavy, man, I did that fucking mean-ass fucking shuffle and fucking Bobby's vocals. I don't think they're quite as awesome as on the last album, but they're damn close, man. I love how he sings this. He just sounds so tough and badass. Again, he can make every line sound like a hook. Then the next song. Actually, I think the next song might be my favorite song. I don't know. These are my 2 favorite songs back to back. Red, White, and Blue. Damn, is that catchy. It's a great anthemic thrash song. Love that breakdown towards the end where they start doing the gang vocals. And man, just charges you up, pumps you up, man. And then it kind of ends on a 2-part epic. You have the wheel, and then the wheel goes into the grinding wheel. And it's a really cool song, very interesting. It's a little different than stuff they've done before. It's a little progressive. I would say it's kind of like a progressive metal epic. A little like kind of the stuff that Iron Maiden does in their later albums, but better. Much better. They're able to do it in a way that doesn't sound boring or like a fucking history lesson. Still keep their street edge. Even when they get progressive, they still sound like guys from fucking Jersey. So that's The Grinding Wheel. And before we get to the last album, they had another live album that I just want to mention. In 2018, they had Live in Overhausen. This was an awesome live album where they did two of their best albums back to back. They played them in their entirety, Feel the Fire and Horoscope. So they played their first album, Feel the Fire, every song from that album, and then they played every song from Horoscope, which is my second favorite Overkill album, and Feel the Fire is my fourth. So hey, how can I not love this? So yeah, if you love Feel the Fire and you love Horoscope, you definitely have to get Live in Overhausen. And then we get to their latest album, the last album they recorded, and it's only their latest because of the Panama. If that Panama didn't happen, I'm sure we would have had probably 2 more Overkill albums by now. But this was the last one, and they're currently working on their next album, which will be out spring of 2023, according to Bobby Blitz. And of course, I will review it when that album drops. I'm excited, of course, to hear it. But this album, The Wings of War, I reviewed it. I reviewed it when it came out, so I'm not going to say too much about it. I will leave a link down below to that review if you want to hear me go into more detail about The Wings of War. But I will say this, my opinion has not changed. That's the thing. When you listen to a new album, maybe I got too excited. Maybe I overpraised it. But no, you know what? It stuck. I was listening to this album again today, and let me tell you something. I stand by what I said. I stand by that this is still my second favorite from the comeback period. My second favorite after White Devil Armory. I think it kicks ass. I don't know why this album doesn't get more love. I do think to a degree Overkill suffer a bit from their consistency. It's funny. It's almost like their consistency has been a curse in the past couple of years because I think people kind of take their albums a little for granted. Motorhead was a little like this towards the end as well. After a while, it just sounds like, oh, it's just another great Overkill album. And I think like if this album came out after Immortalis, man, this would have been like Ironbound. This would have been the album everyone said, oh my God, this is a return to form. But because it's like the 5th great album in a row, I just think people undervalue it. But let me tell you something. Give this album another listen if you haven't listened to it in a while, because this is top shelf Overkill. This is one of their greatest albums. I love it. To me, it's not quite as awesome as White Devil Armory, but it's closer to that album than any other album from this period. To me, it has that perfect combination of heaviness, but with hooks and melodies, and even a little splash of the diversity from the last album, but definitely more consistently heavy and ass-kicking than The Grinding Wheel. The lineup's pretty much the same with the exception of the drummer. There's a new drummer who's their current drummer now, Jason Bittner on drums, and I sang his praises when I did the review of this, and I'm still singing his praises. In fact, he's my favorite Overkill drummer. Yeah, there's just something about Jason Bittner's drums. All the drummers have been great in Overkill, but I just think this guy has a lot of energy and a lot of flair, a lot of style, does a lot of fills, and he's taking shit up to the next level. Song by song, track by track, I think White Devil Armory is better, but this drummer kind of kicked up the energy. I think this is like one of their most heavy and energized sounding albums they've ever released. And they released in 2019. This band that formed in 1980. Yeah, that's right. Still kicking ass, still taking prisoners, and then letting them out and kicking their ass again. That's Overkill. And Jason Bittner's a great drummer, and I love the opening track, Last Man Standing. The fucking guitars just sound like a fucking shotgun, and how fast it is, and oh, it's awesome. Believe in the Fight. Woo! That's my second favorite song on the album. Man, I love this song. It gets so catchy, and fucking Bobby's vocals, so badass, man. And again, I'm going to sound like a broken record because of Overkill's consistent awesomeness, but Bobby Blitz just makes every line he says sound like a fucking awesome hook. And I love that breakdown. It goes into this kind of mosh part, and Bobby's vocals just sound so fucking possessed and awesome. Everyone's beating to a different drum. Everybody wants to be number one. It's like Wu-Tang shit. If Wu-Tang shit was thrash, it would be Overkill. Head of a Pin, great kind of darker kind of metal song. I like that vibe. Batshit Crazy, my favorite song on the album. I said that when I first reviewed it, and I'm still saying it. One of my favorite Overkill songs, might make my top 10 favorite Overkill songs. Batshit Crazy is fucking awesome. And Bobby sounds really fucking possessed on this one. Sounds crazy. He sounds batshit crazy, and it's awesome. Such a heavy, catchy song. Distortion's a cool, slightly progressive metal song. A Mother's Prayer, really catchy, melodic metal song. Heavy, but brings in this other shade, this other element. Again, there's a little bit of that diversity from the last album while still keeping the heaviness. Welcome to the Garden State. Love this song. They did a video for this. This is another prime example of Overkill still having a sense of humor and being fun, that they can insert a song like this. I love it. And to me, this is kind of what they were going for with Old School. I wasn't really crazy about that song. I thought it was a little hokey. This song, they totally nail it. The lyrics are much better on this song, and it's not as meatheaded. It just feels Jersey. It just feels real. It feels like them doing a fucking homage to their state that they're from and that they're very proud of. And it's a really catchy song, brings in that punk side, that punk hardcore side. It's a little bit like in the spirit of Fuck You, that cover of Fuck You. I really love it. It opens with a clip from The Sopranos. I'm an Italian American. I'm from the Northeast. Yeah, I'm a Philly guy, not a Jersey guy. But Philly's right on the borderline of Jersey. And even though Bobby Blitz might tell me to go fuck myself because I'm not Jersey enough for him. But that being said, I'm still closer to Jersey than people that don't live in Jersey or maybe New York. I lived in Jersey twice in my life, and I have a lot of friends and family from Jersey, so I get it, and I love that he's representing Jersey, and it's one of my favorite Overkill songs, another one of my favorite Overkill songs, and this is their new shit. It's a modern day Overkill classic, in my opinion. Out on the Roadkill, love that song, it's a good tune, and Hole in My Soul, ooh, I love that song, just great straight up thrash, borderline classic metal song. I love it. I love this whole album, and yeah, it's like in my top 10. It's one of my favorite Overkill albums, and more people should listen to it and sing its praises, in my opinion. And if you want to hear me gush more about it, click on that review down below. And now I'm going to throw in something I wasn't planning on doing. I was going to wait until next year to do this, but I'm in the mood. I've been listening to all these albums for the past couple of weeks, so I'm going to do it now. Yeah, that's right. It's time for the Rank-A-Rama! Yeah, obviously, I just did in-depth reviews for all these albums, so I'm not going to say a damn thing about them. I'm just going to hit it. I'm just going to rank the albums so that way you know how I feel about these albums. But of course, like with all Rank-A-Ramas, especially in this case, they're subject to change. My feelings about a lot of these albums are always changing. And they have like 3 or 4 or 5 albums that sometimes when I'm listening to it, I think it's my favorite Overkill album. But right now, October 2022, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm feeling in my heart, in my brain, and down below. This is what I'm feeling. I'm not counting compilations. I'm not counting live albums. But I am going to count Overkill because I consider that an album, goddammit. So we're doing 20. So it's 20 albums. Okay, here we go. From bottom to top. 20. Killbox 13. My least favorite Overkill album. But not bad. But my least favorite. 19. Relics. 18. The Killing Kind. 17. Bloodletting. 16. From the Underground and Below. 15. Immortalis. 14. I Hear Black. 13. Overkill. 12. Under the Influence. 11. The Grinding Wheel. Alright, most of those albums I thought were really good, or even great. But now we're getting into my very favorite Overkill albums. We're getting into the top 10. Number 10, Ironbound. Number 9, The Electric Age. Number 8, The Wings of War. Number 7, White Devil Armory. Number 6, Necroshine. Number 5, the top 5, or in the top 5. These are my favorite Overkill albums, meaning that these are 5 of my favorite albums of all time, because Overkill is my favorite thrash band of all time. So number 5, WFO, Face in Your Face. Number 4, Feel the Fire. Number 3, Taking Over. Love this fucking album. Number 2, Horoscope. really love this fucking album. And number one, my favorite Overkill album is The Years of Decay. The Years of Decay. But let me tell you something, nothing's decaying with Overkill. They're aging like a fine wine and kicking ass, but this is my favorite album. So yeah, so The Years of Decay is my favorite Overkill album, and my second favorite thrash album of all time after Metallica's Ride to Lightning, which is my favorite. That means it's over a lot of really awesome albums I love. But man, The Years of Decay, that's an album that just gets better and better and better over the years. Nothing decaying on that album. So there you go. I reviewed every Overkill album, every goddamn Overkill album, and I even threw in a Rank-A-Rama at the end. If you love Overkill, then do yourself a favor and own all their albums, even a couple of those ones that I didn't think were too hot. Eventually get those too. You gotta support the band. They put in the work. They're a straight up working class band, and they're still fucking hungry and kicking ass like they were back in the 80s. They still are to this day. So mad shout out to Bobby and Dee Dee and Overkill. And a mad shout out to you guys for watching 3 goddamn videos of me talking about Overkill. You're awesome. You rock. And if you like this video, click like. Do me a favor. Hook me up. Click like, subscribe, and that's it. That's all I gotta say. I'm exhausted. As much as I love Overkill, I am very tired of talking about them after all these videos. I just want to listen to them. That's the best part about Overkill, is listening to them. So I'm Eddie Canistracci, and I'm out. Rock and roll!